Hey, Sisterhood. Welcome back to the Project Sisterhood podcast. We can't wait for you to dive into this whole conversation with me, Alex, and Chanel, all about prayer. We actually recorded it last month during our 21 days of prayer and fasting. But I really want to invite you to something very special that's coming up in March, Saturday, March 15th. It's the first time we've done this. So Sisterhood one day. Make sure you grab your tickets. We're going to have a day that looks a lot like Fashioned, our conference, but the third day of it. So all day Saturday, we'll be together from 9 to 3. We have a word from Pastor Chrissy Noel from Fearless Church. We have Dr. Kane coming back, an incredible therapist and friend of the house. And we get to have Emmy Rose from Bethel Music leading us in worship all Saturday long. So make sure you get your tickets, invite a friend, invite a sister, invite your daughter, invite your mom. We will see you there. Now, take a listen to a great podcast on prayer. This is a Project Sisterhood podcast for all things women. Whether you feel purpose for ministry, motherhood, or the marketplace, we have crucial and genuine conversations that transcend your season, yet impact your true identity as a woman. From lighthearted and laughable to honest, deep matters of the heart, your soul will be encouraged. We hope you and all women of every age and every stage find life and freedom in Jesus. We're super looking forward to another season of Project Sisterhood podcast. So we're focusing in this month as a church on 21 days of prayer. Yeah. How are you guys, how are you anticipating the beginning of your year to look like? Have you thought of some of your New Year's resolutions? What have you been thinking about as 2025 approaches and is now here for those who are listening to us?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I'm not really like a New Year's resolution girly, but in my spirit, like I just feel like it's going to be, I just feel like fully expectant this year.
Yeah.
Like 2024 was such a preparation year of there's some things coming and I'm preparing you for that. But 2025, I'm just like really expectant to see those things come into fruition. So for me, like the beginning of the year is just, it's so simple. Like, it's not like it's anything super profound, but it's profound even in its simplicity, I guess, is just being in the presence of God, like soaked in it.
Oh, wow, man, we went deep right away. There you go. That was the first 30 seconds, Chanel.
Pull a clip from that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, I always do New Year's resolutions. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing because I can have quite the appetite for fresh start and probably take on too many New Year's resolutions in the past to where I fail miserably by the end of January. So what I normally do, what I tell myself is that I'm going to get ahead of the game and start winning in life on even my New Year's resolutions.
Wow.
And start them in December.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then I feel like I'm not behind.
Achiever much?
I know. See, that's an absolute achiever.
It's okay.
Ism.
I love that about you, though.
But
that's so good.
You get ahead of the game. It's kind of like, 5 a.m. club, sometimes 4:30 a.m. club. I feel like I am winning. I don't know if you feel like this. I am feeling like I'm winning when nobody else is awake, when it's dark outside, nobody else is up. I am winning at life. And if I get in the car and go to the gym and come back and they're still sleeping, oh, that's like championship level. Like, give me a trophy.
I straight up see you in your house being like waking up and it's dark outside and you're like, getting ready for your day.
Nobody else.
I can resonate with that though.
Can you?
Like getting up early and getting a workout in, I'm like, man, I'm better. I'm her. I'm really her.
I'm her.
You are.
Yeah.
You are.
No,
but this year we are not, I'm committing to this. And this is what my challenge is to even the sisterhood, that we are not in the beginning of 2025 trying to become our better selves.
Right.
In fact, I posted something this morning and it was so fire. I'm not going to try to become my better self. I just want to become more like Jesus.
Yes. That's good.
That will be my New Year's resolutions. And Lord, forgive me for me really trying to be my better self ahead of the game. And I think the primary way to do that really is the focus that we have as a church this year, which is to pray.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is? Why do you think that's maybe one of the top ways to emulate Christ and become more like him?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think it's one of the greatest ways to become like him because you're with him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
As it relates to discipleship, I think a lot of things can feel confusing when it comes to discipleship and the spiritual disciplines. And through this podcast last season, and I'm sure this season as well, people will kind of key into. I really appreciate John Mark Comer and his teachings and his books and stuff like that. And in practicing the way he speaks to spiritual transformation and discipleship under Jesus, spiritual formation under these things, which is to be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do as Jesus did. And I do believe that starts with prayer, because that's one of the greatest ways that we can be with Jesus relationally. And so, yeah, I think that's a big reason why we're stepping into a season and really a culture of prayer within our church, because we can't become like Jesus if we're not first with him.
Right.
And being in prayer is being with Jesus. So.
Yeah. Ooh, that's so good. And actually, you brought to my attention that we haven't even introduced ourselves. There may be some new listeners, but you talking about spiritual formation and discipleship, that essentially is your role here, your vocation, even vocational ministry here at Project Church. You're one of our pastors, spiritual formation pastor. I'm Chrissy, just in case people don't know. And my husband and I are the lead pastors of Project Church, and also our executive assistant and sisterhood group leader. Over to my left is Chanel
Janae.
Chanel Janae, or as my series says, Chanel Janae. So it's such an honor to be able to do this with you guys, this podcast, and we're going to have a lot more guests coming up in this season. But yeah, let's just continue to talk about that. I think the culture of the church and what we are wanting to lead in sisterhood, it's got to look a lot like what the rest of the church is doing. And right now we are focusing in on 21 days of prayer, starting on January, I believe it was January 5th, up until the 21st, or 21st day after that is the 25th.
Yep.
And then the 26th, which is a Sunday, you guys, it'll be 3 weeks of praying and fasting. And then that leads up to our 12-year anniversary as a church on the last weekend of January, which is crazy. 12 years as a church. Crazy. And it's interesting that as long as we've existed, I think there was a major shift, maybe about 4 years ago, where God really headed us into the direction and told us, you have to prioritize the presence of God. And what does that look like? And prioritizing the presence of God is oftentimes through prayer. And we've instituted prayer rooms a couple years ago, privately 3 years ago, and with just Sisterhood 4 years ago. So it's just been an incredible journey. But we're seeing a deepening understanding, a deeper understanding, there it is, of what prayer is. So do you guys remember the conversation we had recently with the staff about the definition of prayer? We're reading a book, His House is Presence, by the senior pastor of Upper Room.
Yeah.
And do you remember what that definition was of what prayer is?
I don't remember it verbatim.
No.
Yeah. Essentially, it was that prayer is a relational tool. So many times we see it just as supplication and just asking for things. I think it's a part of it. And one of the things that we do in the prayer room, and I think this is probably a good practice even for women to do during their prayer times, is to, as you're trying to spend time with him so that you can become more like him, you become what you adore, what you love. You know, you start when you love somebody. Like I've been married for 16 years. There's some things that Caleb and I become similar in, even sometimes the way we dress, especially in a culture where androgyny and that kind of style is the same. Like I share clothes with them. But anyways, one of the things that we've been focusing in on our prayer rooms is really focusing on the ACTS model, which is A, adoring him, C, confessing, T, thanksgiving, and then S, supplication. So what has your prayer room or your prayer times look like, and how does it emulate maybe even that ACTS model, or does it?
Yeah, I think that for me, prayer looks different in different seasons, you know. Right now, it is a lot of gratitude and thanksgiving. And in this past season, it's been less of asking for things. Not to say that I'm not asking God for things at all, but it is, it always begins typically with me thanking God and giving gratitude to him. And sometimes I don't even have much to say. And so I start with the simple things, and I start with the things that I know, like, okay, I know that God forgives me. I know that God gave me new life. And so I'll start with the things that I know. And then the Spirit of the Lord will lead me into thanking God for things and giving gratitude to God for things that maybe I didn't even recognize. And so I felt like the Holy Spirit highlights the things that God has been doing in my life and the ways that God has been working in my life. And that does start with the things that I know. And then it leads me into, oh, you know what? God did this last week, or God showed up in this way on this day. And then, so it all starts with Thanksgiving, and then it begins to lead into just even recognizing his beauty and expressing that to God. I think a lot of times in prayer, we're like, well, God knows he's holy.
Yeah.
So why do I need to tell him that he's holy? Or God knows that he's beautiful. So why do I need to tell him that he's beautiful? One, it ministers to God. And two, it is this process of bringing us into something more in prayer.
Yeah.
Because yes, prayer is relational. And I think oftentimes when it comes to the discipleship thing, like be with God, become like God, and then do as God did or do as Jesus did, we often try to get to that end point without without first doing the be with Jesus and then become like Jesus. And it's what I found through prayer is that I get to do what Jesus did because I first was with him and then I became like him, and that happens in prayer. But I recognize that I have to go through the processes of thanksgiving and confession and adoration before I can get to even what God has for me, right? Like I do think honestly the listening part is at the end.
Yeah.
Like I've given him my thanksgiving, I've given him my gratitude, I've given him my adoration, and then I end my prayer session with like I'm just silent and I'm listening. And sometimes that's hard.
I love that. I love that because when you're adoring, confessing, and giving thanksgiving, it almost giving thanks.
Yeah.
It almost empties you of anything that would filter the voice of God incorrectly.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we can go in like, okay, I have to listen. What is he saying? But if we haven't emptied ourselves of pouring out our thanksgiving, pouring out our confession, then I think that we can erroneously be listening with our agenda.
Yeah.
And I love the act of adoring, and I love, but I love that it leads me, because whenever I adore God, sometimes for me, I start to, where is he now? He is actually on the throne room. I know that he's everywhere, but I think there's a propensity to be like, he's everywhere, so we want to see him in our situation. But I'm like, where are you? Where are you? You're in the throne room. And when you're in the throne room and you read in Revelations, the visions that are had, you read, I think it's in Revelation 19, what the angels are doing in the throne room, you can't do anything but adore him.
Yeah.
And it's even before I can give thanks, because it's like, he's up there and I don't even want to think about some of the earthly things. So it's almost like it can be a discipline to adore and see where he's at, and understanding that the majesty and the glory of his train is filling the temple.
Yeah.
It's filling that throne room. It's a beautiful thing. But then that leads me to, just like don't quote me, I think I'm messing up. Revelations 4. Yeah, I think it's Revelations 4. John has a vision of Jesus in the throne room, and his train fills the temple, and then it just brings him to like, take me past the outer courts into the holy place, past the brazen altar. Lord, I want to see your face. Pass me by the crowds of people, the priests who sing your praise. This is a song. Lord, I hunger and thirst for your righteousness. Lord, I long to see your face. But what do they say at the very end? Take the coal cleanse my lips, here I am.
Yeah.
In the throne room, when in Revelations 4, when he's talking about what happens there, his lips are cleansed by a hot coal, which is something that a lot of people and priests would have understood in the Old Testament. And it's almost like anything that comes out of my lips needs to be purified first before I ask for anything.
Yeah.
That was a long way to get to that. But I just adore confessing. I want to take the pressure off of people that you don't have to even come in with an agenda.
Yeah.
The less agenda that you have, the more dependence you have on Jesus. Because sometimes I got to go in there because I'm feeling this way, and that's okay. But there's times where you don't have anything. There may be times where you're like, I don't even want to do this. I don't even feel like doing this. I would say maybe the first thing we do is try to adore him. And that'll lead you to confessing and needing the purification of your lips, so that anything that comes out of your mind or your mouth would be purified and acceptable to him.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was a very long way to get there. But I confession, if you don't know what to do when you're in the prayer rooms, I would say confess everything. Confess what you know that is wrong. Confess what motives may be wrong that you don't realize has been wrong. Confess. Empty yourself. Less of me, more of him in that way. So that's kind of been my beginning, my starting point in the prayer rooms often.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even too, like what you said, when you just go down and start with the simple things of like what you know and the thankfulness, it's like you connect dots and you're like, whoa, like I see what he did there, and that wouldn't happen if he didn't do this here, and you know, and it's almost like this, and you're connecting everything. And when you are doing that, I think we go a lot to our friends for, oh, I just need to process this out loud.
Right.
But you can process it out loud with the Lord, and it's exactly, I think you said it, like an emptying, and it gets everything out. Because when we do that with our friends, we're just talking, right? And then we get to some sort of revelation or conclusion, you know? But when you do it with the Lord and you fully just empty yourself out, and there is gratitude attached to that because you're going through this list of things and you're like, wow, I see what you're doing here. That is when you're truly, truly, truly empty after all of that. And the Lord can really come in and speak to your situation, as opposed to, I think that sometimes we can go to our friends and you're going to get kind of like that skewed advice. Or it's not always that wise counsel. But when you empty yourself in the prayer room and you give it all to God, then you have this room for him to speak to you and him to give you that wise counsel. And you could see everything with a whole new perspective that you would never get processing that out loud in your friend groups. But I think all of those things can start from just a simple conversation. Like kind of like what you said, I don't really go in there with, a full agenda. I'm talking to you all day kind of girl. And like, I'll just think of something. And even my prayer this morning just started with like, wow, God, thanks for waking me up another day. Cause I've been getting these shooting pains in my chest and I don't know, but just like, thank you for waking me up for another day, you know? And just even like my Sabbath on Saturday was so good with my friend Haley. And it was just such a day filled with him. And I felt Sunday, my energy was just up and I felt so good. And I was just like, wow, Lord, like, thank you for just meeting me there on Saturday and filling me up on Sunday and filling me up on Monday and everything else. And it just like pours into all these other things and just protecting me through everything. Like no matter what was like coming against me, like I kept my face on him and that's what got me through. And so I think that just having those moments that just start with, hey God, like, and just starting to talk to him, it just goes into all these different directions. And it's so cool because there's no pressure in that. You're just literally talking to your father. And to go back to the original question of what we were saying at first, like becoming more like him starts with those times because you're building that relationship and you learn more about him and you see all he's done in your life and you adore him and you love him. And when you're in a relationship, like you said, not only do you start to become more like, but it's that contrition versus attrition thing. And it's like, I truly want to please you. And you have this desire to be less like you and more like him because you love him so much. And you know that he cares for you and he's telling you to live life in this way because he cares for you and he knows what's best. So I think that's where it all starts with prayer and being more like him is that straight up just locked in connection of I love you and I know that you want what's best for me and you're going to blow my mind with whatever you have.
Right. I like what you said in the beginning about sometimes you want to process it out with your friends.
Yeah.
And I think that reminded me of the message that Caleb just spoke this past weekend about how we oftentimes will ruminate in the middle of the night when we are full of anxiety and we're like, how am I going to solve this problem? I'm going to think about it more. And sometimes talking to our friends is further ruminating and inviting other voices outside of the pure voice that God, well, the pure voice, God's voice in our situation. So you can almost, and that's where commiserating happens. That's where unhealthy soul ties. Now, I'm not saying don't talk to your godly friends. Seek out wise counsel. Yeah. But I think first pray.
Yeah.
But first pray. I think that should be the title of this because I think, but first pray. Yes, you have a healthy community. Yes, you have a pastor. Yes, you have a community group leader. But first pray. And then oftentimes God will bring the confirmation through the people, through his body. But you want his words to be confirmed. You want, after you are in the word, for somebody to confirm what you already read. And then that will just reinforce your relationship with God before the relationship with his body. And again, it's even having a relationship and seeking his face before you're seeking his hand of provision. So we have to see him face to face. Gosh, when you're in a relationship with somebody, it gets intense when you're looking eye to eye. So much different than I just handed you something and there's a part of me that was given to you, but then you're not connected anymore. So I just think that, it makes me excited for our people to be in the prayer rooms and to focus on that. Is there anything else that you're doing in January when you know that there's 21 days of prayer and fasting that you are going to do to reinforce your closeness to the Lord and you prioritizing his presence?
Yeah, honestly, even as it relates to what you were asking about early on with the new year and resolutions and stuff, similar to Chanel, I don't really do resolutions, but I do see this new year. I know that this new year is going to be a year of change and a lot of transition and moving and things like that. But I know for me personally, I want to live a life of discipline. And this has a lot to do with prayer. Like, I want to be more disciplined in prayer. And it's funny because I'm actually rereading a book called Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools by Tyler Staton. Highly recommend, especially during this time of prayer and fasting with our church.
Recommendation, wonderful.
There it is, boom. But
for first-time listeners, we like to recommend books
we
every
do.
episode.
But I'm also the type of person that reads the introduction to books. So
yes, absolutely.
Not everybody does that though.
Oh, I can't get through it.
Wait, what?
I can't.
Do you read the
I
introduction?
always read the introduction.
Not everybody does that. Yeah,
That's
weird.
like part of the book, though.
It is
It's
part of
okay.
the book.
I'm not shaming
okay,
anybody
no shame.
who doesn't, but
you don't
weird.
read
It's
it?
weird.
Yeah, see, Mike doesn't do it.
Okay.
So anyways, but at the beginning of, or in the introduction, he talks about how evangelical Christians are within like all religions are the least likely to pray. And like Muslims pray a lot, Catholics pray a lot. There are so many different religions that are so focused on prayer, and evangelicals have more reasons not to pray than to pray, whether that's time or our distractions with our phone. We just don't necessarily have that discipline to pray. And I do think a lot of that is like, oh, we look at it, oh, it's not about relationship, it's not about religion, it's about relationship, right? And it's like, well, if that's the case, and going back to the whole definition of prayer is about relationship, then we should be praying the most. You know? And so for me, it's in this new year, in this season of prayer, in this season of our church where we're focusing more on prayer, where we're focusing more on the presence of God, I want to be more disciplined. And I have a part to play in that. Like we said before, sometimes we go into prayer rooms and we're like, we don't know what we're doing here. We don't have an agenda here. I'll be honest, sometimes I don't want to go to prayer rooms. I want to stay in bed at 6 a.m. and cuddle my husband, but I'm going to go because I know that God is there and I know that God will meet me there and I'm meeting God there. And for me personally, when it comes to discipline, when it comes to the spiritual disciplines and even things of religion, I actually do think that there are good aspects of religion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I
100%.
think as not just Project Church, but as an evangelical Christian community in our Western world, we have thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
Absolutely.
And we've said all like religion is bad. It's all about relationship.
Right.
But I'll be honest, I do think that God still cares about our outward expressions.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I do think that, yes, God cares about our heart transformation, but he also cares about what we're doing
Yeah.
and our behavior. And I do think prayer is a behavior.
Yes.
And we shouldn't relegate prayer to just go to this 1 hour prayer room on Wednesday.
Right.
But we should be cultivating a life of prayer. And that is a behavior. And that is, I do think that's a part of religion that we need to hold on to.
Yeah.
And if you look at scripture and you look at the life of the disciples, the one question they asked Jesus was, teach us to pray.
Right.
Can we get back to that? And I do think that in this season of sisterhood, in this season of Project Church, because we are focusing on prayer, and I would say personally for me, it is build that discipline, build that muscle of prayer. Sometimes I do not want to go to the gym and then I just don't go.
Yeah.
But I don't want that to be like, to be the same way for my prayer life.
Right.
I want it to be, God, I don't want to go to this prayer room, but I'm still going to go.
Yeah.
And maybe it is a religious thing for me. But I'm okay to have prayer be a religious thing in the sense of going.
I absolutely agree. It's almost like, for how many centuries has the church existed, and how many centuries before Jesus came that Judaism was all based off of handing down story through different meals that you have, through different appointments at the temple. You know, like this religion is discipline.
Yeah.
And to attach it to people who have fallen, who are in authority of religion, is erroneous. I just think that we have to, again, not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but religion is the means by which God gave us the means that he gave us to see him.
Yeah.
Like, we have to see him this way. And ultimately, discipline is elimination of distraction. And that's what I think prayer can be. And if there's a few things that, and I know we're focusing on the prayer rooms, if there's a few things that I would like to normalize in the prayer room, it would be boredom.
Yeah.
It would be no agenda. It would be flowing with the Spirit. It would be listening. Evangelical prayers and prayer services become like Sunday morning services, where there is worship in song and then maybe transitional prayer into a message. And I'm like, part of the reason why we wanted to focus on prayer rooms and the conviction in this house was that we know that there are services and there's that, but can we develop the discipline to remove all distraction and any action that not action, but any responsibility on us to direct something and to teach people. I think as pastors, we could overteach. I think we could take on too much of the responsibility for people's discipleship when the Holy Spirit wants to disciple them. The Holy Spirit disciples me. He disciplines me. He corrects me. If people are not interacting with the Holy Spirit, firsthand, then I'm afraid that we're getting in the way.
Yeah, 100%.
So let me read this just because you said it. The Lord's Prayer. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and the street corners that they may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, I'm going to skip to verse 7. And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases. Do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Pray then like this. And then we get the Lord's Prayer. But verse 7, do not heap up empty phrases, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. That should take the pressure off of anybody who's praying for the first time.
Right.
That, man, you don't have to be eloquent. You don't have to have a word, like certain words that you already pre-planned before you came into his presence. God doesn't even care about that. He won't hear. Those words won't be heard. but B, your Father already knows what you need. Oh gosh, that makes me just want to be yielded in the prayer rooms to just, you know what I need. So let me just empty out the stuff that shouldn't be there. Or let me pour out and empty out all the praise that I have not yet attributed to you and your glory. But man, it's making me very excited about the beginning of this year, 2025. So what are the ways that we can invite sisterhood to be a part of prayer?
Oh, come to the prayer room. Seriously. I would love to see more of our sisterhood in the prayer rooms because they're just fantastic. Like, I've probably had some of the most amazing conversations with the Lord in our prayer rooms. And I'm like, we talk about the same things at home. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if it's because, we're two or more are gathered or what. But when I'm in that prayer room, I get a lot. So I would love to see more of our sisters coming to the prayer rooms, like even with like work schedules and stuff. If you could make like at least a 7 p.m., like that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But having more people in there, because there's just something special that happens in the room, and it's like you have to be there.
Be in the room.
Yeah.
So 6 a.m. on Wednesdays, 6 p.m. noon, and then 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So every Wednesday is a great time. But what's really cool that we're starting in this new year is that we are going to go ahead and stream them online. So I still want to invite everybody to the room.
Yeah.
But if you can, I totally understand that. If you want to take a lunch break and you just want to put your headphones in and listen to the noon prayer time, it's not going to be overly directed, but there will be, some singing, maybe. There will be some leadership from a pastor in the room, but yeah, it's very exciting that people get to hear it online even and be praying with us. But there's other things going on in sisterhood that I do want to make sure that everybody is aware of. We have our sisterhood book club that's starting up, as well as our sisterhood leadership meetings. So if there's anybody who leads a sisterhood group or leads in our church on a team, then they are a part of sisterhood leadership because you're leading everywhere. And through different ways, not leading everywhere. There's so many different ways that you can lead, not just in a group and not just on a team. And I'm just excited that this year, as we're praying and fasting 21 days, it really just points you back to the word as well. And so a Bible study and all the Bible studies that sisterhood groups are doing are going to be highlighted. And we will also do another Bible study TBD once this book club is done, because it's great that we're doing a book club on sisterhood and friendship and building strong friendships. But the next book club will be revolved around study, a lot more study of the Bible. So I'm so glad that you guys are praying women. It's an amazing thing to be surrounded by women who are praying and hearing from the Lord and trusting in the Lord in that way and building sisterhood. Building sisterhood through that example as well. So I love you guys. And I'm so excited for the sisterhood to hear this. Stay tuned for more.
Stay cool.
Stay cool.
This is a Project Sisterhood podcast for all things women. Whether you feel purpose for ministry, motherhood, or the marketplace, we have crucial and genuine conversations that transcend your season, yet impact your true identity as a woman. From lighthearted and laughable to honest, deep matters of the heart, your soul will be encouraged. We hope you and all women of every age and every stage find life and freedom in Jesus.